You are an astronaut tumbling through the greatest stretch of cold darkness in the known universe. It is a place where nothing exists, devoid of stars, planets, or even distant galaxies. In this realm, you would not encounter another living soul for hundreds of millions of light years. This terrifying location is officially known as the Bootes Void, often called the Great Nothing. Unless you find a way back to your ship, you will drift through this perplexing dark for billions of years. Eventually, your frozen and desiccated body would become a permanent part of this silent expanse. What is truly fascinating is that you have likely been staring at this void your entire life. Look up into the northern sky and find the space between the Big Dipper and the star Arcturus. Right there, in that empty patch, is where the Bootes constellation hides its massive secret. You can barely see it from Earth, but it is there and it is exactly where you're headed. What would it truly be like to fall into this incomprehensible ocean of total darkness? First, you must realize that it would take a near incomprehensible amount of time to reach it. The Bootes Void is situated 700 million light years away from our home planet. To put that in perspective, the Andromeda Galaxy is only 2.5 million light years away. This void is 280 times farther than our closest major galactic neighbor. Even if you could travel at the speed of light, the journey would still take 700 million years. That is the same amount of time it took for life on Earth to evolve from sponges to humans. Using our current technology, reaching this void is far beyond the realm of possibility. Our fastest probe travels at only a tiny fraction of the speed required for such a trip. At those speeds, it would take you over 1 trillion years to arrive at the void. Besides, that probe doesn't even have chairs or seat belts for a human passenger. But let's imagine you had a ship with capabilities far beyond our current understanding. You would jump into your ship and prepare to leave the comforts of Earth behind. Leaving the solar system is a much more complex task than simply flying past the planets. Your spaceship would need to enter a specific orbit to break free of the sun's gravity. You would have to travel faster than 30 kilometers per second to escape the solar pole. Instead of a straight line, your path would be a widening spiral through the system. With an impossible spaceship at your command, you easily clear the outer edges of our sun's reach. As you venture further out, you would notice the sky beginning to grow noticeably emptier. Once you leave the Milky Way, the hundreds of millions of stars we see from Earth disappear. Our galaxy spans 100,000 light years across, and we are right in the middle of it. It would take 26,000 years at light speed just to reach the edge of our own galaxy. When you finally leave, the stars are replaced by faint, fuzzy patches of light. These distant galaxies would eventually fade from your view as you approach the void's edge. After millions of years, you would pass the final star clusters of constellations like Ursa Major. Beyond that point, there are no more galaxies ahead, and the backdrop becomes totally black. The crazy thing is that once you reach the edge, you still have an astronomical way to go. Crossing the Bootes Void to its center is another impossibly long and lonely haul. This void is 330 million light years across, making it the biggest in the universe. To reach the center at light speed, you would need another 165 million years. That distance is roughly 1 quadrillion miles of absolutely nothing standing in your way. This is why scientists have rightfully named this place the Great Nothing. To understand the scale of your isolation, we must first look back at the pale blue dot you once called home. The Bootes Void sits approximately 700 million light-years away from our solar system. That distance is so vast that human comprehension begins to fail and wither away. Consider the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest cosmic neighbor, which is only 2.5 million light-years away. The Bootes Void is 280 times farther than that iconic spiral of stars. If you could somehow travel at the speed of light, the journey would still take 700 million years. That is the same amount of time it took for life on Earth to evolve from simple sponges to modern humans. Our current technology, however, makes the journey even more laughable and tragic. The Parker Solar Probe, our fastest craft, travels at only 0.05% of light speed. At that speed, reaching the void would require more than 1 trillion years of constant travel. To cross such a distance, we must imagine a ship with capabilities far beyond our current understanding. You strap yourself into the command chair of this impossible vessel, ready to leave everything behind. Escaping Earth's gravity is only the first minor hurdle in this cosmic marathon. You must travel at over 30 kilometers per second just to break free from the sun's gravitational pull. Your trajectory wouldn't be a straight line, but a widening spiral around the heart of the solar system. Each orbit flings you further out, past the gas giants, and into the Kuiper Belt. As you cross the heliopause, the solar wind fades, and you enter the true interstellar medium. Behind you, the sun shrinks until it is just another indistinguishable spark in a field of diamonds. The Milky Way spans 100,000 light-years across, a massive disk of swirling fire and dust. Traveling from our position halfway to the edge would take 26,000 years, even at near-light speeds. As you finally pierce the edge of the galaxy, the sky begins to change in a way no human has ever seen. The millions of stars that once filled your view simply vanish into the rear-view mirror of history. In their place, you see only fuzzy patches of light scattered across the darkness, distant galaxies. But as you approach the Bootes Void, even these distant islands of light begin to fade away. You pass the last major star clusters, leaving the constellation of Ursa Major far behind. Ahead of you lies a horizon of total, absolute blackness. Reaching the edge of the void is not the end, but merely the beginning of the most difficult leg of the journey. The Bootes Void is 330 million light-years across, a distance that defies all earthly logic. To reach the center of this nothingness at light speed would take another 165 million years. That represents 1,000 trillion miles of travel through a region where literally nothing exists. No asteroids will strike your hull, and no planets will provide a gravitational slingshot. You are traveling through a ghost realm, a place the universe seems to have forgotten. Your ship's life support systems groan under the strain of centuries of continuous operation. To stay sane, you focus on the numbers, calculating the quadrillions of kilometers left to go.
You realize that if you died now, your frozen body would drift in this expanse for billions of years.
There is no one here to retrieve you, and no force to stop your momentum. The fuel is running low, and the ship's AI begins to shut down non-essential sectors to save power. The hum of the engines, the only sound you've known for lifetimes, suddenly starts to sputter. You realize you're no longer just a traveler, you are becoming a permanent resident of the Great Nothing. Just as the main thrusters fail completely, a faint, rhythmic scratching sound begins to echo from the outer hull. The rhythmic scratching against the hull persists, a haunting reminder of the vacuum pressing in from all sides. I must ignore the phantom sounds and focus on the final burn required to break the sun's iron grip. Escaping the solar system is not a simple matter of flying in a straight line away from home. To escape the sun's gravity, the ship must accelerate to a velocity far beyond the Earth's orbital speed of 30 kilometers per second. I'm forced into a wide, agonizing spiral, orbiting the sun repeatedly to build the necessary momentum. Each orbit pushes me further into the cold, stretching the distance between me and the warmth of the inner planets. Mars and Jupiter fall behind, becoming nothing more than flickering specks in a darkening tapestry. The technical toll on the ship is immense, as the life support systems struggle against the rising radiation of the outer rim. Finally, the sun's influence wanes, and I cross into the vast, silent realm of interstellar space. Here, the Milky Way reveals its true, terrifying scale, spanning over 100,000 light-years of space. Even at near light speed, it would take 26,000 years just to reach the outer edge of our own galaxy. I'm a ghost in a machine, traveling through a cemetery of stars that will outlive my memory. As I move further from the galactic core, the density of the stars begins to thin noticeably. The familiar constellations of Earth, like Ursa Major and Orion, begin to distort and stretch into unrecognizable shapes. Every light I see is a relic of the past, some already extinguished by the time their glow reaches my sensors. I check the fuel reserves, knowing that every course correction in this emptiness cost me decades of survival. The silence of the cabin is louder than the roar of the engines once used to launch this vessel. Outside, the sky is slowly draining of its life as the brilliance of the Milky Way fades into a dull smudge.
Navigation becomes a nightmare when there are no fixed points left to calculate a trajectory.
I find myself talking to the ship's AI, just to hear a voice that isn't my own echoed in the steel. The external temperature sensors begin to drop as I leave the protective warmth of the galactic clouds. I'm entering a place where gravity no longer feels like a tether, but a memory of a world I will never see again. The Bootes Void lies ahead, a monstrous spherical gap that could swallow billions of galaxies. The darkness of that void is unlike anything found within the confines of our home system. My hands shake as I adjust the inertial dampeners to compensate for the lack of external pressure. I remember the bustling streets of the city, the noise and the light, and it feels like a dream from another life. The scratching on the hull has stopped, replaced by a low, thrumming vibration that I can feel in my teeth. The sensors detect a gravitational anomaly at the very edge of the Milky Way's disk. It shouldn't be there, a concentrated mass in a region that is supposed to be empty. Is it a rogue planet? Or something far more ancient and predatory waiting in the dark? I must maintain my course even as the lights of the galaxy behind me begin to flicker out one by one. The stars are no longer my friends. They are distant strangers watching me walk into the gallows. Beyond the Milky Way, the sky is filled with fuzzy patches of light that are actually entire galaxies. But as I move deeper toward the void, even these grand structures start to vanish from sight. The darkness ahead is absolute, a wall of nothingness that defies human comprehension. My eyes ache from searching for a single spark of light in the infinite shadow. A warning light on the oxygen scrubber begins to blink, a rhythmic heartbeat of impending doom. I will reach the center, if only to prove that even in nothingness, a human heart still beats. The last star of the Milky Way finally slips behind the horizon of the ship's hull. Suddenly, the main computer screams an alert as all external cameras fail simultaneously. Through the manual viewport, a massive, unidentifiable shape begins to blot out the last remaining distant galaxies. The massive shadow ahead is not an object, but the beginning of the void itself. Sensors indicate that the density of matter is dropping towards zero. I'm crossing the threshold where the cosmic web begins to fray. Behind me, the Milky Way is a fading smudge of gold and silver. Ahead, there's only a 330 million light-year expanse of perfect, unyielding black. The distance between atoms here is measured in kilometers rather than centimeters. Every second of travel pushes me deeper into this impossible graveyard of light. How can a place so vast contain so absolutely nothing at all? The silence is no longer just a lack of sound, but a physical weight. I check the long-range scanners, hoping for a single blip of a distant sun. The screen remains a flat, unresponsive line of electronic static. Even the cosmic microwave background radiation feels thinner in this place. I am now farther from a human soul than any person has ever been. The stars behind me have finally blinked out, one by one. There is no up or down when there's no gravity to define them. I wonder if the laws of physics still hold firm in this wasteland. This is the Bootis Void, a hole in the universe the size of a nightmare. I feel as though the darkness is trying to seep through the hull plates. Time has lost all meaning without the cycle of day and night. My ship is a tiny island of light in an ocean of eternal night. Perhaps this is what the universe looked like before the Big Bang. The internal temperature of the ship is beginning to drop. I hear the metal groaning as it contracts in the absolute cold. I remember the sun over the Pacific and how it used to burn the skin. That world is now a ghost, millions of years in my past. A sudden vibration ripples through the floorboards of the craft. There should be nothing here to hit, not even a speck of dust. The external hull cameras show only the same endless black as before. Oxygen levels are holding, but the psychological pressure is rising. If I were to open the hatch, I would simply fall forever into the dark. This space is so empty that it shouldn't even be called space at all. I feel a sense of insignificance that is almost physical. Is it possible that something else lives here, hidden by the dark? I keep thinking I see shapes moving just outside the light of my thrusters. The mind creates monsters when it is starved of light and sound. There is no turning back, for there is no landmark to guide the way. I am a passenger on a ghost ship sailing through a dead sea. I must keep moving forward into the heart of the nothingness. But the deeper I go, the more I feel that the void is watching me. The ship's computer suddenly announces a gravitational anomaly where none should exist. Something massive and invisible is pulling me toward the center of the emptiness. As the hull begins to buckle, I realize I am no longer alone in the dark. I scramble to steady my breathing as the metal hull of my ship groans under an invisible pressure. The darkness outside isn't just an absence of light. It feels like a heavy, physical weight pressing against the glass. My sensors begin to scream as the external temperature plummets to a staggering 3 degrees Kelvin. Frost begins to bloom across the interior panels, skeletal white patterns spreading like a virus. Even through the layers of my advanced suit, I can feel the life-draining chill of the void creeping in. I am now floating in a realm where the closest galaxy is over 10 million light years away. This is a place where even a bright galaxy would be too faint for my eyes to perceive. Without stars to guide me, I lose all sense of up or down in this microgravity environment. It feels as though I'm in a state of eternal freefall through a bottomless chasm. This sensory deprivation is more absolute than any tank on Earth could ever simulate. I reach out for a control lever, but my movements feel sluggish and disconnected from reality. The silence here isn't quiet. It is a roaring, deafening vacuum that fills my ears. I check the exterior cameras, hoping for even a single pixel of light from a distant star. There is nothing but the vantablack expanse of the quintessential chasm. The ship's batteries are draining faster now, struggling to keep the heaters running against the absolute zero. If the power dies, I will lose the only reference point I have left in this universe. I realize that in this void, every direction is effectively down, because there is no up. The sensation of movement becomes impossible to track without a fixed object in sight. This is the core of the Great Nothing, a sphere of emptiness that could hold billions of Milky Ways. My breath hitches as the internal lights flicker and then die completely for a long, terrifying second. In that total darkness, I feel the abyss staring back into my very soul. I think of Earth, 700 million light years away, a vibrant marble of heat and noise. Here, there are no seasons, no days, only the unchanging frozen vacuum. The hum of the life support system is the only thing keeping the madness at bay. I notice a small crystal of frozen oxygen drifting past the window, a tiny diamond in the dark. The gravityless environment makes me feel like I'm expanding to fill the void itself. My limbs feel like lead despite the lack of weight, a psychological trick of the isolation. I wonder if the 60 lonely galaxies hidden in this darkness feel the same abandonment. They are the goldfish in the Pacific Ocean, lost in a scale that defies comprehension. A sudden metallic clink from the rear of the ship makes my heart leap into my throat. I check the pressure seals, fearing the cold has finally found a way to crack the hull. It was just the metal contracting in the extreme cold, a phantom sound in a silent world. In this place, time seems to stretch and fold until minutes feel like centuries. I'm a ghost drifting through a graveyard of stars that never were. I must recalibrate the sensors to detect the faint thermal signatures of the cosmic filaments. Suddenly, the long-range radar pings, indicating a massive structure just ahead. It shouldn't be there. This part of the void was mapped as completely empty. A faint, pulsating light begins to emerge from the blackness, rhythmic and unnatural. As the ship drifts closer, the shape of the object begins to resolve into something geometric. The ship's engines suddenly ignite on their own, pulling me toward the mysterious light against my will. The sudden jolt of the engines throws my head back against the pilot's seat. My hands scramble across the flickering console to regain manual control. Instead of a crash, a massive holographic projection erupts from the center of the bridge. The ship's archives are automatically triggering a deep space orientation protocol. A grainy 2D image of the night sky from ancient Earth appears on the primary screen. This is where it began, when astronomers first realized the universe wasn't just a smooth soup of stars. In 1981, a team of researchers began a survey that would change our understanding of cosmic geography. They weren't looking for objects, but for the gaps between them. The Bootis void emerged like a ghost in their data, a hole in the fabric of existence. Robert Kirshner and his colleagues found a region that should have contained thousands of galaxies. Instead, they found nothing but an impossibly vast, silent ocean of dark. The hologram shifts to show the universe looking like a giant sponge. This is the foam-like structure of the cosmos on the largest possible scale. Galaxies aren't scattered randomly. They are clinging to these thin, glowing threads. And between those threads lie the great voids, the empty bubbles of the universe. I watch as the hologram zooms into one specific bubble, the one I'm currently trapped in. It is 330 million light-years across, a distance my mind refuses to process. How did something so large and so empty ever come to exist? Tiny ripples in the early universe, smaller than atoms, were stretched by cosmic expansion. Gravity pulled matter toward the denser areas, leaving the thin areas even thinner. Billions of years of this cosmic tug-of-war created the Bootis void. I feel like a speck of dust that fell off the edge of the table. The ship's computer begins to list the residents of this emptiness. In a space that should hold 2,000 galaxies, we have only found 60. They are the most isolated objects in the known universe. If the Milky Way were in the center of Bootis, we wouldn't have known other galaxies existed until the 1960s. Generations of astronomers would have stared into a sky that offered no answers. I stand up and walk to the reinforced window of the bridge. My eyes strain to see even a single pixel of light in the distance. There is nothing but the reflection of my own suit in the glass. Why is the ship pulling me deeper into the center of this mapping data? A low hum vibrates through the floor as the mapping computer recalculates our trajectory. A new waypoint appears on the HUD, labeled Anomalous Density. Science says this place is empty, but my sensors are detecting a massive gravitational pull. Could there be something here that our maps missed? The history of the void was written by people billions of miles away. They only saw the lack of light, not the presence of something else. I realize the ship isn't malfunctioning, it's following a signal. The signal is coming from the very heart of the Great Nothing. The holographic map suddenly turns blood red and starts to collapse. A massive structural groan echoes through the hull as the ship accelerates into the unknown. Through the window, the darkness is no longer empty, it's beginning to take a shape. Something is waiting in the center of the map, and it's much bigger than a galaxy. The computer screen flashes a final message: discovery inevitable. The lights on the ship go completely dead, leaving me in total silence as a massive door seems to open in the dark. The silence in the cabin is no longer just an absence of sound, but a heavy weight pressing against my chest. My eyes begin to play tricks on me, projecting ghostly shapes onto the canvas of the eternal night outside the glass. I realize the darkness isn't just a lack of things, but a deliberate structure built by the hands of gravity. Think of the universe not as a chaotic soup, but as a vast, intricate sponge made of light and shadow. Long ago, the slightest ripples in the early universe began to pull matter toward denser regions. Gravity acted like a sculptor, dragging stars and gas away from these lonely pockets to feed the growing clusters. What remains here in Bootis is a bubble of space where the sculptor simply stopped working. Far beyond my reach, the cosmic web continues to pulse with the lifeblood of a billion suns. These filaments are the highways of the universe, carrying the energy that fuels the birth of every star. I'm drifting in the negative space, the empty room that the rest of the cosmos forgot to fill. Gravity didn't just leave this place behind, it actively cleared it out. Like a tide receding from a beach, the matter was drawn toward the distant massive walls of the void. If I could see the dark matter strands, would I feel less alone in this hollowed-out sphere? Scientists call this a supervoid, a place so vast that light itself takes an eternity to cross its span. 330 million light-years of nothingness is a distance the human mind was never meant to comprehend. Between the bright filaments, these bubbles are growing, expanding as the universe pushes itself apart. Dark energy is the wind that blows through these empty halls, making the void even larger every passing second. Every galaxy I've ever known is clinging to the edges of these pits, like survivors on a life raft. I have fallen off the raft and into the deepest part of the ocean. Gravity continues to win its war elsewhere, dragging more matter into the dense, crowded filaments. But here, there is no gravity to speak of, only the slow expansion of the great nothing. The cosmic web is the nervous system of the universe, but I have found a place where the nerves are severed. I can feel the vacuum of the ship's interior becoming as cold as the space outside. The power levels are dropping, and the sensors that map the web are failing one by one. If the Milky Way were at the center of this void, we wouldn't have known other galaxies existed until the 1960s. We would have thought we were the only thing in a universe of total darkness. Is it better to be part of the crowded web or to have all this space to yourself? I begin to see the faint, needle-like structures that link the few lonely galaxies inside this bubble. These are the minor bridges, the secondary filaments that gravity forgot to strip away. They are as thin as spider silk and just as fragile in the face of the expanding void. I hear a groan from the ship's hull as the lack of external pressure begins to take its toll. There's no air out there, no heat, and soon, no light at all. Even in this emptiness, there's a rhythm, a pulse of the universe that I can almost hear. The cosmic web is not just where things are, it is where the story of the universe is written. And I'm currently floating in the margins where the ink has run dry. I try to steer the ship toward the nearest filament, but the engines only cough and die. Every action I take feels meaningless in the face of 330 million light-years of vacancy. Gravity is far away now, a king who has no power in this lawless land of nothing. I look back at the sensors one last time and see something I didn't expect. There are galaxies in here with me hidden in the dark like silent ghosts. These are the outcasts, the 60 lonely wanderers that the rest of the web left behind. They shouldn't be here, and yet they endure in the absolute center of the great nothing. As I drift toward the nearest one, the ship's computer suddenly lets out a long, high-pitched scream of feedback. The radar shows something massive directly ahead, but the window shows only a void that is starting to breathe. The radar continues to pulse with a rhythm that feels disturbingly like a biological heartbeat. Outside the reinforced glass, the darkness seems to thicken into a physical presence that defies light. A faint, ghostly shimmer finally emerges from the center of the sensor array's focus. It is a galaxy, lonely and magnificent, floating in a sea of nothingness where it should not exist. This is one of the 60 forgotten islands of light lost in the great nothing. The initial terror of the void begins to dissolve into a strange, heavy sense of tranquility. There is a unique beauty in being the only witness to a light that has traveled for eons without touching a single eye. Gravity here is a whisper rather than a roar, pulling gently on the ship's metal frame. The traveler wonders if madness is simply the mind's way of adapting to an environment with no boundaries. The communication systems have been silent for decades, yet the silence is no longer deafening. Every breath taken inside the suit feels like a precious gift from a civilization that no longer matters. Another galaxy appears on the starboard side, glowing with a fierce, defiant orange hue. These 60 galaxies are the true hermits of the universe, existing in a solitude that spans billions of years. The traveler realizes that the void is not an ending, but a different kind of beginning. In this place, the ego of humanity is stripped away until only the core of existence remains. The fear of being forgotten is replaced by the relief of being free from all burdens. The stars of these lonely galaxies burn with a purity that is untainted by the chaos of the cosmic web. Life here would be a quiet affair, far from the colliding currents of the dense galactic clusters. Perhaps the Bootis Void is the universe's most sacred cathedral, a room built specifically for silence. The traveler's oxygen reserves are a countdown to a final, permanent integration with the dark. There is no panic, only a profound sense of readiness for the coming sleep. The distant galaxies look like fireflies caught in a jar that spans 500 million light-years. For the first time, the traveler feels a part of the void rather than an intruder within it. The sound of blood rushing in their ears becomes a lullaby of the living among the dead. Suddenly, a flash of light from a supernova in a void galaxy illuminates the darkness for one brief moment. It reminds the traveler of a summer lightning storm back on the planet they once called home. But home is now a concept too small to fit inside this massive expanse. The boundaries of the physical body seem to blur as the cold seeps through the insulation. The heart rate monitor on the wrist flatlines into a steady, comforting hum. In the absence of everything, the traveler finally understands the true scale of the universe's design. The isolation is not a prison, but a throne from which to watch the end of time. The 60 galaxies slowly drift further apart, expanding the nothingness between them. The traveler's journey ends not with a crash, but with a silent integration into the cosmic background. The Great Void has claimed its visitor, and in return, it has given them the peace of the eternal. No more questions remain for the one who has seen the heart of the Great Nothing. The universe breathes in, and the traveler breathes out for the very last time. Darkness is not the enemy, but the canvas upon which all light is written. The journey is complete, and the silence is finally absolute. We are all but temporary flickers in the vast, enduring shadow of the cosmos. Sleep now among the stars of the void, where time has no meaning and the dark is home.